Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It's Ilenia Romani from FEEM, Fondazione Eni Enrico Mattei, together with Laura Cavalli. And together, today I have the pleasure to moderate the event, How the EU Cohesion Policy Contributes to the SDGs, Lessons for the COVID-19 Recovery. This event is happening in the context of the 19th European Week of Regions and Cities, as well as the Sustainable Development Festival by IASBIS, the Italian Alliance for Sustainable Development, and is hosted and organized by Fondazione Eni Enrico Mattei. I thank very much all the three institutions for this chance and the opportunity of organizing such an event. We have a number of speakers coming together to address some very interesting and mostly pressing issues, starting from the importance of doing research at the service of sustainability, as well as involving policy and decision makers from different levels to create sustainable and durable networks. I'd also like to stress the focal point of recovery, which shall be understood as the opportunity to recover from COVID, but also from extreme events such as earthquakes, as we will see later on. Without much other words, let me now turn to the agenda of the event, and later I will briefly introduce our speakers to you. We will begin with the speech by FEM researchers around the Italian recovery plan and its coherence with the 2030 agenda and the SDGs, and a brief note about the methodology they have developed. Then, moving from the macro to the micro level, we will explore the contribution of the EU cohesion policy to the COVID response of the autonomous region of Sardinia. Changing geographical area, we will then move to the central areas of Italy, especially those hit by earthquakes, and the role of the ESI funds and civil society for their rebirth. Then we will listen to the unique local case around the importance of connections, partnerships at the urban level. And finally, we will close our event on a more institutional tone with a speech around our priorities for a sustainable future, hence going back to the macro level and closing, in a sense, our sustainability circle. Let's now see briefly the speaker of these sessions. So we have from Fondazione Eni Enrico Mattei, Laura Cavalli, Program Director of the Research Program Agenda 2030 and Sustainable Development at Fondazione Eni Enrico Mattei. Since 2017, she is UN SDSN Manager for Italy and Adjunct Professor at Catholic University of Milan in Managerial Economics. Together we have Mia Alibegovic. Since November 2019, she's a researcher in the FEEM 2030 Agenda and Sustainable Development Program. Her research focuses on development of sustainability assessment modeling, sustainable development indicators and indices, and SDGs interconnections. Then, from the autonomous region of Sardinia, we'll have Marco Onnis, Policy Officer of Sardinia since 1999. He held different positions in different departments. Currently, he's working at the Regional Programming Center as the European Structural Fund Technical Expert for the ERDF-OP Sardinia Managing Authority. Together with Marco, we have Sandro Sanna. Since 2009, he's a technical executive of the Regional Programming Center of the Sardinia region, and since 2015, he's a constituent of the technical staff of Managing Authority of Sardinia Regional Operating Program, ERDF, 2014-20. Since 2019, he's also supervisor for the startup of the ERDF 2021-27 programming period towards the UN 2030 Agenda SDGs. Then we have Fernando Nardi, hydraulic engineer, PhD and associate professor of hydrology and director of WaterDoc, Water Resources Research and Documentation Center. He specializes in geospatial, hydrologic and hydraulic modeling of water systems for understanding and managing natural resources, hazards and hydroclimatic extremes. Followed by Stefano Dorazio, president of Terra di Amatrice, a non-profit association established in 2016 after the devastating magnitude 6.2 earthquake occurred in August of that year. Moving on, we'll have Sergio Cacci, Mayor of Montalto di Castro in the province of Viterbo and member of the European Committee of Regions. And finally, we'll have Massimo Gaudina, EU official since 1994, currently head of European Commission representation in Milan since 2017, and previously head of communication unit at the ERC, the European Research Council. So this is the panel of speakers we will be hosting in the event of this afternoon. And let me now give the floor to Laura Cavalli. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ilenia. I'm really happy to be here, and I thank the European Commission for allowing us to be part of the side events of the European Week of Regions and Cities. We are here not only to moderate, but we are here with friends, because we are talking at different levels, starting from research, together with local authorities, with the academic world, because we want to together express our method of working. In the framework of the Agenda 2030, actually, we have to work in partnership, as SDG 17 says, partnership for the goal. And this is actually this framework, the one we want to follow and the one we follow also in organizing this event. I will present briefly the method. We are FEEM, so we are a research foundation, and together with the partners and some friends we have the pleasure to have here with us, we develop an innovative methodological framework to track the contribution of the European cohesion policy to the SDGs. I will present the methodology because, as you will see later, we were able to apply at different level the same structure in order to shed light on the recovery opportunity we have, looking at the recovery plan. Together with colleagues of ours, we see how important is going through the specific local level in order to make a bridge between research and local sphere. So from where our idea started. So we wanted to study the framework that was already employed by the European Commission, applying and reasoning about the way of highlighting and weighting not only climate change objective and environmental objectives, but the whole Agenda 2030. So we're starting from the European cohesion policies. The European Parliament and the Council added these points, these important points, to check the support to climate change and the support to environmental objectives to the cohesion policies and investment. And starting from here, together with the colleagues from Sardinia region, we wanted to extend the methodology, because we thought that talking about environmental issues is really important and crucial, but within the framework of the Agenda 2030, we have to consider also the social and economic sphere. So we wanted to extend the methodology. And we wanted really to study and implement a model, a sustainability assessment model, to the operational programs co-financed by the European Union, referred to the entire Agenda 2030, referred to the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. Why? Because we wanted to build a synthetic sustainability index of the programs. We wanted to shed light and to measure the ability of keeping the track with respect to the Agenda 2030, and we want to be aligned with the methodology proposed by the European Commission, extending it, in order to contribute not only to the climate change debate, but also to the sustainability debate. And we wanted to have the opportunity to test the model, so not only to develop it from the methodological perspective, but also to apply it and to test it. And we did that together with the colleagues of Sardinia region in the first step. So I don't want to waste too much time on the methodology. You have the opportunity to check here on the different papers we have submitted, but here we wanted to stress the method as a bridge between the academic world and the local authorities and the local world. So what we did, First of all, we entered really into details in the correct interpretation of the targets. It seems really easy, but we have 169 targets of the Agenda 2030. We have more than 240 indicators, and not all of them are relevant for our purposes and for our local spheres. Of course, we have to think about local spheres, think global but act local, it says. So we have to interpret in a correct way the targets of the agenda, linking them with the correct indicators. Then we start building our matrices. So we work in different steps. First of all, we try to answer the following question. How much the single intervention field of the cohesion policies contributes, impacts the single target of the Agenda 2030. So we try to check the impact, if have no impact or direct and indirect impact on the single target of the Agenda 2030. We work with matrices of 169, which are actually the target of the agenda, and 182 intervention field of the cohesion policies. Then we go on, and we wanted to check both the orientation of the impact and the magnitude of the impact. Of course, an investment on one specific field can have a positive impact on another field of the Agenda 2030, another target, or a negative impact. And then we wanted and we introduced these news that was not presented in the European Commission framework, allowing the negative orientation to be there. Then we wanted to check the magnitude, not only the impact, but also the magnitude. So how much this intervention effect on the target of the Agenda 2030. And finally, we put together the impact, the orientation, and the magnitude, and we were able to synthesize the result, summing the single impact within the target of the goal, and at the end, summing them respecting the single, the whole Agenda 2030. So what we were able to find, we were able to put together, as I said before, the single target of the agenda. You see here summarized them using the 17 goal, and the 182 intervention fields summarized here on the vertical axis as a single strategy. What we found is that we had different kind of impact and different goals of the agenda are touched by the intervention field of the cohesion policies. You see that this table is colored in yellow when you have a strongest impact, positive one, while it's darkest blue if you don't have a strong impact of them, showing that the cohesion policies in general have a quite strong direct impact effect on goal 9, which is the one related to infrastructure, and a part of them also on goal 12 and 13. That is in general. So we wanted to put and to introduce a qualitative mixed method to check this link between cohesion policies and Agenda 2030. Then at the end, we add the last step, which is we had the possibility of adding the correspondence between the intervention field and the public eligible costs, because we wanted to quantify, so not only in terms of weight, we have within the intervention field together with the Agenda 2030 and the target, but we also wanted to quantify the eligible cost of the operations selected for support within the framework of the cohesion policies in order to be able to quantify the cost of the operations selected within the framework of the Agenda 2030. So this was the general framework that we built, and we were able to apply that at different levels. So with this in mind, I thank you, and I so leave the floor to Mia Alibegovic that will talk about the way we apply that.
Mia, sorry to interrupt you before you start speaking. I would like to remind to our audience that there will be a Q&A session at the end of our speakers. Sorry for not bringing these out before. And you can submit your questions in the chat panel. We will collect them and then deliver them to the speakers at the end of the session. Thank you very much.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Ilenia. So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jeli Begovic, and as already told by Ilenia, I'm a researcher at Fondazione Eni Enrico Mattei, specifically within the 2030 Agenda and Sustainable Development Research area. I'm very glad to be here with you this afternoon, and I will speak about the research. Are the recovery plans going the same direction as the 2030 Agenda SDGs, the case of Italy? So before starting, I will just show you very briefly the outline of my presentation. So I will first speak about the context in which the recovery plan is located, and I will introduce to you the structure of the Italian National Recovery and Resilience Plan. Then we will see how we can measure the contribution of the Italian plan's investments to the 2030 agenda, presenting some methodological premises and then the results. And finally, 4 main recommendations suggested by our findings will be discussed. So the main objective of the plan is to mitigate the socioeconomic damages caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, and to relaunch, in this case, the Italian economy by aligning it with 3 strategic axes defined at European level, that are namely the digitization and innovation, ecological transition, and social inclusion. So Italy will have to respond with these resources to some structural challenges already identified in the 2019-20 country-specific recommendations. Actually, the European semester cycle that usually ends with these recommendations was adopted in 2021 to be aligned with the Recovery and Resilience Facility at the heart of the Next Generation EU. So in this context, we all know that the European Union has been fully committed towards the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. And in particular, the European Green Deal that was presented in 2019 by the von der Leyen Commission aims to transform Europe into the first climate neutral continent by the 2050. And actually, it is an integral part of the Commission, of the strategy of the Commission to integrate the SDGs. So in accordance with this strategic approach, within the Recovery and Resilience Facility regulation, it is clearly stated that national plans must specify to what extent their investments and reforms contribute to the European objectives related to climate, energy, and environment. So here you can see the Italian National Recovery and Resilience Plan. As you can see from the slide, it is divided into 6 missions that are aligned with the 6 pillars contained in the Recovery and Resilience Facility regulation. From the graph on the right, you can see that most of the resources are allocated into mission 2, that is Green Revolution, Ecological Transition, and it is followed by mission 1, Digitization, Innovation, Competitiveness, and Culture. So my team and I have produced a policy brief in which we have studied the contribution of the plan's investments to the 2030 agenda. We have used the methodology that was introduced by Laura Cavalli before, and actually the application to the cohesion policy will be then presented by Marco Onnis and Sandro Sanna. For what concerns this analysis, so the data underlining this analysis, we have referred to the table attached to the Commission staff working document related to the analysis and the recovery of the Recovery and Resilience Plan of Italy and its approval. So this table categorizes the measures into missions, components, budget, and very important, there is also the associated intervention field, and then the climate and digital tag. I want to underline here that we have considered only investments, not reforms. This is due to the methodology itself, having built to analyze the impact of the investments on the agenda and on the reforms. So we have involved the reforms also because they usually do not involve disbursement of money. Here you can see the results by mission. So we will see very briefly the results by each mission. So Starting from Mission 1. Mission 1 aims to relaunch the Italian economy thanks to some interventions related to digitization and innovation, also reducing the competitiveness gaps in the production system, and intervening on public administration, tourism, culture, and also the production system. So the results confirm the vocation of the mission. We find at forefront the Goal 9, Industry Innovation Infrastructure, followed by Goal 8, Decent Work, Economic Growth, thanks to investments related to the internationalization and the competitiveness of the production chains. And then we find Goal 7, Affordable and Clean Energy, Goal 13, Climate Action, thanks to investments related more to the improvement of public buildings in terms of energy efficiency, and interventions related to tax credits for environmental sustainability. Then we find Mission 2 that aims to ecological transition, moving towards climate neutrality, reducing climate altering emissions through interventions like energy efficiency, renewables, the protection of natural and agricultural ecosystems and biodiversity. So on the one hand, the thematic vocation of this mission is consistent with the results. So we find at forefront Goal 7, Affordable and Clean Energy, Goal 13, Climate Action, and Goal 9, Industry Innovation Infrastructure, thanks to interventions related, for instance, to smart grids, use of renewables, and so on. On the other hand, even if in the plan it is clearly stated that with the plan's interventions, specifically within this mission, action will be taken at 360 degrees for what concerns forests, soil, air, and so on, by the protection of the existing areas and the creation of new ones. It seems that this mission, and actually the whole plan, does not contribute enough to the goals related to biodiversity that are Goal 14, Life Below Water, and Goal 15, Life on Land. Moving now to Mission 3. Mission 3 aims to make the infrastructure system more modern, resilient, sustainable, and digital, specifically referring to the extra-urban transportation sector. In this case, the results confirm the vocation of the mission. So we find that it contributes mostly to Goal 9, Industry Innovation Infrastructure, 13, Climate Action, and 11, Sustainable cities and communities. Moving to Mission 4, this mission aims to improve the education, training, and research system by reducing some structural gaps in the provision of primary education services and basic skills. So we find that it contributes mostly to Goal 9, Industry Innovation Infrastructure, Goal 13, Climate Action, and 7, Affordable and Clean Energy. And this is due to the fact that there are substantial investments related to the improvement of research and innovation infrastructures and the renewal of the same in terms of energy efficiency. So as you can see from the figure, Goal 4 is modestly impacted. We have to consider that we have included that the 57% of the maximum amount available hasn't been defined actually in the table of the European Commission that we have considered in this analysis, and that the strongest contribution to education in Italy will come from surely the various announced reforms. We have then Mission 5 that in this case it aims to pursue the objectives that are transversal to the whole plan, that are combating gender discrimination, reducing youth unemployment, and reducing also territorial imbalances. So it is also in this case we have considered there is a great gap between the amount classified in the table and those the maximum amount available. So we have considered 38% of the maximum amount available. So in this case, we find that it contributes mostly to Goal 9, Industry Innovation Infrastructure, 13, Climate Action, and Goal 8, Decent Work, Economic Growth, thanks to investments that were associated with some intervention fields that are namely industrial transition, entrepreneurship, and companies' adaptability to change. Lastly, we can find Mission 6 that aims to create territorial facilities such as community homes, community hospitals. It aims also to strengthen the development of telemedicine and to better integrate all the social and health services by digitizing and innovating the national health system. So obviously the most impacted goal here is good health and well-being, and it is followed by goal 9, industry innovation infrastructure, because of some interventions related to the technological and digital modernization of hospitals, and also the enhancement of biomedical research. So here you can see the overall contribution of the plan to the 2030 agenda. As you surely noted, thanks to all the individual contribution we have seen before for each mission, the infrastructural and innovative character prevails over all the other aspects. In fact, goal 9, industry innovation infrastructure, is the most impacted goal, one of the most impacted goals in all the missions, thanks to all the intervention we have seen, ranging from research to digitization, from innovative hospitals and schools to clean transportation. So as regards instead goal 13, climate action, and goal 7, affordable and clean energy, they are very important for the nature of the plan and for the objective of the plan. We can see that the plan shows us how environmental sustainability is declined with an approach aimed more at energy transition and the abatement of climate altering emissions than at the protection of ecosystems and biodiversity. And this can be seen also in the modest contribution of the plan to the goals related to biodiversity. So goal 14, life below water, and 15, life on land. On the other hand, the objective of social inclusion can be captured in this case by goal 8, decent work and economic growth, and by some extent also by goal 1, no poverty. And we haven't found actually significant impacts also on the goals 5, gender equality, and 10, reduced inequalities. So I would like to conclude with some recommendations. So considering what emerged, we have seen that digitization is the most widespread element within the interventions financed by the plan. And this must stimulate reflections on the fact that digitization could be seen more as an instrument and not as a specific goal to achieve an inclusive and sustainable growth able to generate spillover benefits. For what concerns ecological transition, given the modest contribution we have seen for the goals 13, life below water, and 15, life on land, it must be ensured a stringent implementation of the principle do no significant harm in the selection and implementation phases of the projects. For social inclusion, instead, the funded projects will have to certainly decline all the other dimensions related to gender equality and the abutment of intergenerational inequalities and that of the territorial imbalances. And lastly, performance has to be monitored through the progress made on the targets of the plan, and we need an accurate, efficient, effective, and timely data collection to guarantee transparency on the implementation of the activities and the achievement of the related qualitative and quantitative results. So I'll stop here. Thanks.
Thank you, Mia. Thank you very much also to Laura. I think it's very interesting to analyze the recovery efforts of the EU from an SDGs perspective. I believe the 2030 agenda, beyond setting clearly the sustainability targets we have to achieve, can also be a powerful lens through which we can analyze different realities, and you provided us with a really, really interesting case. So thank you very much. And let's now leave the floor to Marco Onnis and Sandro Sanna from the Autonomous Region of Sardinia.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, all. You can hear me? Okay. So, thanks, Ilenia, Laura, and
Sorry, Sandro, you have to mute your microphone and maybe to share your presentation.
thanks, Ilenia, and thanks to Laura and all the Mattei Foundation team to invite us and for the opportunity to show our work. And how Ilenia and Laura said in the introduction, the focus of our intervention is on the contribution of 1420 European cohesion policy in Sardinia in response to COVID emergency, and also its impact on the UN 2030 agenda goals. I don't see, I can see the presentation. Sandro?
Can you see the screen? No? Now?
No, I can't.
I don't know.
Now we can.
Okay.
That's okay.
Yes. On the first slide, please. Okay. In this presentation, we'll go through how EU has tackled the emergency generated from the COVID pandemic and its economic impact, how Sardinia redirecting financial resources in its ERDF program 1420, and the results of the application of the methodology developed with FEEM to assess the program contribution to the UN 2030 agenda, and a view on the 21st-27 cohesion policy. The cohesion between its states and regions is at the core of the European Union since the creation of the common market and the customs union in 1957. The cohesion policy aims at strengthening economic, social, and territorial cohesion in the European Union and correcting the imbalances between country, regions, and cities. And this policy is one of the most transversal and cross-cutting policies, which contributes to most, if not all, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And ERDF and ESF, it means the European Regional Development Fund and the European Social Fund, are the main funds through which the Union is to support the achievement of the cohesion objectives. As for the 47 EU cohesion policy is financed through the EU long-term budget, the multi-annual financial framework, with resources amounting to 351 billion euros on a total budget of 1,082 billion. And cohesion policy is delivered through three main funds. The aforementioned European Regional Development Fund aims to strengthen regional economic and social cohesion by investing in growth enhancing sectors to improve competitiveness and create jobs. The European Social Fund mainly invests in people with a focus on improving employment and education opportunities. And it also aims to help disadvantaged people at risk of poverty and social inclusion. Cohesion Fund invests in green growth and sustainable development and improve connectivities in member state with GDP below 90% of the EU 27 average, so does not apply to Italy. Those funds, together with the European Agricultural Fund for Rural Development and the European Maritime and Fisheries Fund, make up the European Structural and Investment Funds. The strategy, these funds contribute to the Europe 2020 strategy. That was the strategy for the 14-20 period. And the strategy puts forward the three well-known mutually reinforcing priorities. There are smart growth, developing an economy based on knowledge and innovation, sustainable growth, promoting a resource-efficient, greener and more competitive economy, inclusive growth, fostering a high employment economy, delivering social and territorial cohesion. These three growth dimensions are pursued by cohesion policy throughout 11 thematic objectives and depicted in the chart. The orange for research and innovation, ICT, competitiveness of SMEs, and low carbon economy are mainly pursued by the ERDF and have the majority of funds allocated. The green ones, also pursued by the ERDF mainly, are dedicated to sustainable growth, and the blue ones, employment and mobility, social inclusion, better education, and better public administration, are mainly pursued by the European Social Fund. The greatest part of the budget of the Union allocated to the funds is implemented by the European Commission under shared management with member states, means through national and regional operational program. Sardinia has two programs, one for the European Social Fund and one for the European Regional Development Fund, as we see in this representation. And each program set out a strategy for the contribution to the chosen thematic objective and consists of priority axes, each subdivided in one or more investment priorities and intervention fields, and a financing plan specifying the financial allocation for each priority and each intervention field. The ERDF OP Sardinia, with a total financial allocation of 931 million and 30 million euros, consists of priorities that mainly correspond to the seven of the 11 thematic objectives and technical assistance. As for the European Social Fund program, with a total financial allocation of 440 million euros, consists of 5 priorities that mainly correspond to 4 of the 11 thematic objectives seen before. As regards to the financial allocation to the thematic objectives, we have the representation of both funds, where the orange bar represent the ERDF and the blue ones the European Social Fund. As for the impact to the UN 2030 agenda, this chart shows the contribution of the Sardinian OPs, both ESF and ERDF, before the pandemic to the Sustainable Development Goals, assessed through the methodology we developed together with FEEM and that Laura and Mia interventions illustrated. And in the bar chart, measure the contribution of each thematic objective to the SDGs is represented. And in the pie chart shows the cumulative effect of both programs on each goal, with goal 9, economic development, mainly impacted by the ERDF intervention, goal 4, education, mainly by the European Social Fund intervention, and goal 1, poverty, 8, employment, are pursued by both programs. Then COVID happened, and the European response was prompt. The Commission launched in April 2020 two packages of measures to mobilize EU cohesion policy to face the crisis: the Coronavirus Response Investment Initiatives and the Coronavirus Response Investment Initiative Plus. The CRII packages did not offer new financial resources. Rather, it provided flexibility to use existing and unspent resources and redirect them to where they were most needed. Other flexibilities available included the transferring of unallocated EU funding between funds and category of regions, an immediate increase of liquidity to improve cash flow, an option to increase the EU co-financing rate to 100% for the 2021 accounting year, and a temporary framework for state aid measures to support the economy. Sardinia exploited the last three mentioned, and then also these initiatives were supplemented at the end of May 2020 with the presentation of the React EU package, proposing additional, in this case, 50 billion euros of resources to foster crisis repair. So the implementation we see now in our program, the implementation of the program was inevitably conditioned by the onset of the pandemic, and the EU timely response to the emergency allows Sardinia to use all the flexibility tools to adapt the initial strategy, conveying 180 million euros of ERDF program resources to support intervention to counter the disease and its impact on the economy. And as the chart shows, resources were addressed to priority 3, that is competitiveness, and 7, health, for the majority. And the blue bar represents resources reallocated to the priority 3 in the Enterprise Emergency Fund established to support business according to the condition of the temporary framework for state aid, as I mentioned before. And the orange bar instead represent the resources reallocated to priority axis 7 to finance healthcare costs for the emergency and its effects on the Sardinian social protection health system. In this view, this pie chart shows another aspect of another view of the financial allocation variation on ERDF, and enhancing how the ERDF program priority 3 and 7 relative weight has increased from the initial allocation to the allocation after the reprogramming phases. And instead, as we can see in these charts, here we have the results of the application of the methodology on our ERDF program. Shows has the increase to the financial resources at priority addressing competitiveness and health clearly influenced the contribution to goal 1, poverty, and goal 3, health. As for the conversely, as for the application, as for the European Social Fund, the application of the same model to the program does not show significant changes on the effect on the goals. But another chart with an overview of the two programs' estimated contribution to the UN 2030 agenda at the end of the year 2020. Here are shown the selected operation contribution. Bars on background represent selected operation total cost and total financial allocation of the two programs. In this case, we use the model to assess the contribution of the selected operation and not on financial allocation, as we shown in the aforementioned slide. As regard to 21-27 programs, the onset of COVID-19 obviously affected 21-27 planning process. The debate on the future of the cohesion policy began since the first year of the 14-20 cycle and converged on the EU legislative process for the multi-annual financial framework and the regional policy presented by the European Commission in May 2018. The proposed package had not a strategy on which it was based, but keep on pursuing the Europe 2020 targets. UN 2030 agenda, albeit not explicitly addressed, was already on background, and that happened at the end of 2019 when the new von der Leyen Commission presented its 29-24 strategy, the European Green Deal, that enclosed the Sustainable Development Goals and set even more ambitious targets for the 2050. Subsequently, the cohesion policy legislative package on discussion realigned to the new strategy, and the first act being the proposal of the Just Transition Fund at the end of the following year. And then COVID, that led the European Union to the aforementioned flexibility measures and to a new debate on the action to be taken to address the crisis that lead to the adoption of the next generation EU package at the end of 2020. So the regulation package for the 21-27 period was afterwards approved on next June 2021. In Italy, also the planning process is in late negotiation on the partnership agreement in the context of the Sustainable Development National Strategy is near the conclusion. The planning process in Sardinia is proceeding in the same context, strongly intertwined with the Agenda 2030, on which Sustainable Development Regional Strategy is built. And during the pandemic emergency, the Sustainable Development and its Senate came public favor, and this allowed Sardinia region to define the guidelines for the 21-27 SI funds program after a programming process in which the objectives of the cohesion policy and the sustainable development are integrated in a common strategic framework. And so the result was the UN 2030 agenda is totally mainstream in the recently approved Sardinian Sustainable Development Strategy that naturally is consistent with the European Green Deal and replicate the scheme of the EU policy objectives with a smarter Sardinia, a greener Sardinia, a more connected Sardinia, a more social Sardinia, and a more closer to citizen Sardinia. And the European Union effort deployed to overcome the economic crisis stemming from the COVID pandemic is the opportunity Italy and Sardinia in particular should seize to exit the past low growth decade. And the implementation of the future 21-27 program should devise the most appropriate actions to achieve the 2030 and 2050 Sustainable Development Goals. We will do it through the strategic and environmental assessment, as we said 2 years ago, and we are evolving in a strategic sustainability assessment. Hope to achieve. And that's all for my intervention, and thank you all for your attention.
Thank you very much, Marco, and Sandro as well, for having given us a technical perspective of the whole framework behind this, and also for this double shift on the one hand from the EU recovery plan to the EU cohesion policy, and from the Italian case to the Sardinian case. So that was very, very interesting. Thanks again. Let's now move to another geographical, to a different geographical area, and also a different concept of recovery, with a talk by Fernando Nardi and later on by Stefano Dorazio. Thank you.
Thank you, Ilenia Romani, for giving me the floor. Sharing my screen. Is already shared?
Yes.
Okay. Do you see my front page of the presentation?
Yes,
okay.
Full screen.
Good afternoon. So following the agenda is really a pleasure because the introduction from Laura Cavalli to Mia Libegovic and the others, also the colleagues from Sardinia, already gave really a solid introduction of some concepts that are also characterizing my presentation from the problems, the challenges, the methodologies introduced by FEEM colleagues to also the structural funds that are also the subject of a case study of a project I'm going to talk to you today. So the talk is about the ESI funds and the role of civil society guiding the rebirth of the areas in emergency. And of course, we are within the European Week of Regions and Cities, so we are trying to show the value, the importance of working across multiple sectors. I am a scientist, I'm a professor in hydrology. My work is about water resources and risks with a multidisciplinary and multi-risk, interests of my sector. So. Trying to mention the key concepts that are driving the idea and the project that I'm presenting, the case study I'm presenting with you today, City for Green. City for Green is a project by FEEM funded by the DG Regio. So within the ESI funds, the Cohesion funds. I was really introduced by the colleagues from Sardinia before, the Cohesion funds, the importance and the goals of these funds. So just key references is for me is a pleasure. I'm not, of course, alone in this project coordination. This project falls within the FEEM Agenda 2030 and Sustainable Development research area, coordinated by Laura Cavalli, and the team include Mia Libegovic that talked before, Davide Baccari and Andrea Spaziano, that I really like to acknowledge for the work they're really providing to the project. Just reading the title is kind of self-explanatory. engaging citizens for co-assessment of sustainable, resilient and green water and territorial management actions in areas affected by the 2016-2017 earthquake in central Italy. So City for Green, that's the acronym. You can read through the capital letters in the title. So the goals of City for Green: engaging citizens, co-assessment. I'm going to give you more information what co-assessment means. Means assessing together with, in this case, science-driven analytics, co-design and co-implemented with the stakeholders and citizens. So this is co-assessment action. So working with citizens, engaging citizens for understanding the effects of an event like the earthquake that hit central Italy a few years ago, and how to rebirth, born again. So what to do for restarting the economy, the society. Again, going back on the City for Green title, with a strong value on the implementation of the Green Deal, the green economy, the circular economy principles. So what we mention as a green, blue, water, and land development plans that are characterizing the project. So other key points, without going too long in the specifications and technical specification of the project, a strong promotion into science towards society, science, stakeholder, citizen efforts. And in the co-design, in the co-analytics, assessing in quantitative terms how the cohesion funds are spent, and which are the value of these interventions specifically for this project. So if we also go more in some details about the goals, so is sharing knowledge, communicating and engaging. Policy briefs, I'm also glad that after me there is not only as for the agenda civil society organization from Dr. Dorazio, but then also some institutional politics component that are showing how it's important to work together across the different perspectives and also institutional duties. So policy briefs and stakeholder citizen briefs. So making concise messages and information that are needed for moving towards the direction we want to move. And then, as I already said, quantitative metrics. And in this case, I won't go into details because it was already introduced by Laura Cavalli and Mia Libegovic, the methodology, the importance within the Agenda 2030 and the SDG indicators that we implemented. So FEEM methodology on the assessment in quantitative metrics, again, of the value of these interventions for reaching and moving towards the Agenda 2030 SDGs. The promotion of smart and digital technologies for water territorial management, another objective of the projects, and bottom-up approaches. Again, like I said, working with citizens and stakeholders with a bottom-up approach. The challenges that the project is facing are manifold, and many of you already know how is difficult when you work across different levels, from citizens to authorities, so top down, from the decision makers to down. It's not showing the slide again. Are you see my slides? Because I lost the presentation. Sorry.
No, we can see them very well.
Okay, sorry. The screen is not showing my slide. Okay, sorry. And the fragmentation, overlapping. So many challenges are facing when we need to. There's so many complex, diverse intervention. There are many challenges from top down, like the politics decision and the decision-making framework, also from bottom up, like from citizen perspective, from the local, even small scale economic entities like farmers or and other small economic entities, again, are facing a hard time after a big event like the earthquake to understand how to work together, okay, rather than conflicting in the use of resources and to restart the economy and the society as a whole. Briefly, many of you probably know, many are from Italy, also from at the European scale, this event was really an impact for anyone. So the area is quite large. Entire central Italy was hit, under 40 municipalities and 4 regions, across in an area that in 2 years was a first big event, 2016, and after 1 year, another seismic activity intense that really provided the most damaging factors to the central Italy domain of study. And an action plan I already introduced, I won't go into details, that start from a knowledge base to the development of data methods. I won't go again into technical details, to develop policy briefs, citizen briefs that are supported by data science analytics, implementing SDGs indexing, and then working again with stakeholders and citizens with workshops, events, from knowledge sharing, training, towards making anyone understand, in this specific case, the value of cohesion funds, how they were spent, and the value of the green-blue interventions design in the area, and indicators that we use for assessing how we're moving at. There is a specific domain of interest and also a stakeholder that is a partner of the project, is the Restart project by the central Apennine district, the water district. The agency is a water resources and risk management authority that is working as a coordinating entity for the regions, because the value of the water, land resources versus the risks, not to mention not only the seismic risk, but also the other landsliding and other risk, is the motivation by which the cohesion funds of the Restart project have been assigned to the entity as a coordinating entity for understanding how best look at the prioritized intervention and move ahead with the authorization and the planning of the resources for the restart. Going towards the end of my presentation, transdisciplinarity means not only multiple disciplines like engineering from my side, data analytics, but also social economic sciences that are also behind FEEM team, Laura Cavalli and the others. So we are working together in a multidisciplinary context with, again, SDG quantitative indices for a cross-fertilization and cooperation that is, again, moving towards the stakeholders and the citizens that are not only receivers of the project outcomes, but also co-workers, cooperators of the project. Different target groups, citizens, CSOs, like the Terra di Amatrice CSOs, civil society organization that is presenting after me, and also municipalities, managers, professionals, any other kind of stakeholders, agriculture, food, tourism, energy, and so on, including SMEs and others. The project started at the beginning of the year. We are in the middle of the project, so I won't present final results undergoing, but we are moving ahead towards a project that is, from the technical activities point of view, is 1 year, end of the year, and then moving ahead with, presenting the results next year. So at the moment, I would like just to mention that we have been working with stakeholders for data collection and understanding with the Central Apennine Authority and other stakeholders, municipalities and the others, the regions, for data gathering and the data science SDG methodology presented by the FEEM colleagues that have been implemented for the co-assessment. And some final key remarks. Again, City for Greens aims to work for and with citizens. The engagement is not like preparing material that the citizens and stakeholders may understand, but working from the start to co-design the methodology from the data gathering to the methodology implementation together with the entities that at the end will also be the receivers. So science moving towards common stakeholder language information that are needed so that the rebirth activities that are complex, diverse, and also conflicting, because many different sectors need fundings to restart and go ahead, that should understand the value of the common principles, the blue-green economy, that are driving the delivery of the cohesion funds from Europe to this region after this dramatic event. And the quantification, because those numbers that anyone should be able to catch are important, so that it's not like in qualitative general terms. And the SDG indexing is really helpful in this kind. So looking forward for sharing maybe next events, the final outcomes of the project. And thank you. Look at the project website in the FEEM webpage. You can follow this link, and you have all the contact information, my personal, but also the team contact information. Thank you.
Thank you, Fernando. And now let's give the floor to Stefano Dorazio.
I will keep this. I will keep the presenting mode and showing the slide so that it's easier.
For the moment, we cannot see the slides yet.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
Okay, and we can see the slides as well. Perfect.
Okay, first of all, good afternoon to everybody, and thank you for having invited our association to this important meeting. We represent like a grain of sand in the whole round of this situation. But what works in the macro system, like a nation like Italy, the regions that we saw before, and the bigger town, works also in the micro reality such as Amatrice. We are a little CSO organization that was established in 2016, just after the quake, so in November, formed by old people originally from Amatrice. What we have done after the quake was to support people and support the community. To do this, we provide some mobile homes that were displaced in the territory because at the time the government has placed some facilities with tents to host all the people that lost their homes. And but unfortunately, farmers, breeders, and artisans should stay close to their business because it was impossible to deal with their animals, for example, during the winter. So we will provide these mobile homes that are in the next slide, and to support the people of Amatrice. Before it was said of the importance of the social aggregation, and the next step has been made with the township of Amatrice, that asked the association to build some like community houses. Just think that the territory of Amatrice is formed by the main town that was completely destroyed with almost 300 people that lost their lives, and 69 little villages all around. So in this little village, there were no community house, no places where the old people or the fewest young people could meet, stay, and socialize. So we start to build these four buildings, and 3 of them are completed. The other one is on the way. And what I'd like to underline is that all this was made just by private donation. Not even €1 came from public, and not €1 came from taxes or anything. Everything was made by voluntary donation by many people, and also by major companies like such as Goldman Sachs or Caterpillar, who gave us some donation, or Confagricultura. We thank them, because thanks to this donation we could achieve this goal. What we are doing now is to try to support the economy. That is something very important for the area. An area that is not just the one of Amatrice, but something that starts from Camerino and the surrounding area in Marche region, and ends up to Amatrice, with the destruction made by the following quakes that started from August 2024 up to mid 2017, with the damage that to be restored should need about €5 billion. So we are a little part of a huge situation, but the problems and the goals are the same, especially in all this area that is now ground zero, because almost has been destroyed. And so in one end can be done everything in the same direction of the New Deal, that is the one of the energy efficiency, environmental sustainability, and to do a step beyond to a new shape of life of the people. And let me just close my little speech to tell you that we are trying to keep all the youngsters in the territory. And to do this, we have started a partnership with some university. One of these is the one in the department of Professor Nardi. And we are trying to provide a scholarship for a youngster that want to stay in the territory. As we are also promoting the smallest food producers that are still in business, although what happened, and in a few days will be in London in a food exhibition that is called Bella Vita, an exhibition for food producer, high quality food producer, and we brought them there 7 little producers to show their goods, to show the high quality of food. That is important, not only for Amatrice, but it's important for all Italy, I think, because we are experiencing a globalization also of food. And our food is made by little, peculiar, small companies that are still on business and that produce high quality food with high quality standards. So that's this is our goal that we are keeping on. Thanks to everybody, and I hope that we can do it, and we can succeed in this. And as we hope that in the higher scale, so the region and especially Italy, all this fund can be used to to make a better state and to to be a better situation and better future, especially for the young. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to Fernando Nardi before and Stefano Dorazio. I think we had a very interesting both multidisciplinary and multi-stakeholder perspectives as a first intervention, and then also a very tangible experience, firstly negative, and then which turned out into positive. So thank you very much for having shared with us your project and experience. And now let's remain on the practical hand-on case, but more at the same time highly institutional. It's an honor for us to have here Sergio Cacci, the mayor of Montalto and member of the European Committee of the Regions.
Hello.
Okay.
Good
Hello.
afternoon.
Good afternoon. I can hear you, but I cannot see you. You should turn your webcam on if possible.
I'm in the car. Just a second. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Okay. Can you hear me better?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. As member of Committee of the Region, and I thank you very much for the invitation, I'd like to introduce our barometers that we voted last week for the 19th European Weeks of the Region, if you don't mind, because it's a real analysis of the local authorities. The barometer published last week is being undermined by the failure by national capitals to consult cities and regions on EU-funded emergency recovery plans. The prospect of EU funds not being directed where cities and regions feel they are most needed also risks problems posed by an 180 billion funding gap between spending and revenues caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Our second annual report, which includes one of the largest EU-wide opinion polls of local and regional governments, even conclude also highlight wondering social and economic inequalities between regions within the same country and across the EU, including a rural-urban digital divide that is undermining the EU's ambitions for a green and digital economic transition. Our president, Apostle Tzitzikostas, said that our regional and local barometer measures the impact of the pandemic on our regions, cities, and villages, like Montalto di Castro, so that all levels of governments, EU, national, regional, and local, can take concrete action to address our people's problems. Too often, Europe is only associated with its 27 member states. Europe is much richer than that. It is over 300 regions, 90,000 municipal cities, and 1 million regionally and locally elected politicians, representing 500 million people. Our barometer offers a new perspective on the state of the EU, better taking into account its diversity, complexity, and richness. Can you hear me? Because I'm in the car, I don't know if it's okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, okay. And just a second. I give you some key findings of the local and the regional barometer. Regional and local finances are at risk. Which means that regional and local authorities carry the burden of providing quality public and health services for their people at a time when local finances are rock bottom. Across Europe, the rise in costs and decline in revenues has left a gap of around 180 billion in 2020, which 130 billion lost by regional and intermediate levels, and 50 billion lost at municipal level. The EU and the member states have a duty to urgently help local authorities to absorb the shocks on their finances, also via national recovery plans. The best way for Europe and national governments to accelerate the recovery is to ensure its efforts fully take into account regional and local specificities. Ignoring the territorial dimension of health is putting lives at risk. To be better protected, we need to reassess health competencies between the different levels of government. Europe should invest more in building resilience in regional systems and coordinate capacity stress tests to assess their crises. We risk missing the recovery targets, local and regional levels, because strategies do not take into account the real needs, diversity and disparities of our communities. National governments must implement plans together with their regions and cities. We must be key actors of the plans governments given our responsibilities in areas such as public procurement, transports, climate actions, health and education. The total coverage of the Europe household with very high capacity networks is 44% in remote areas, compared to 20% in rural areas. Europe and its member states must urgently invest. Digital cohesion is crucial to a solid and inclusive recovery. The young and low-skilled workers have been the most affected. People living in poor conditions, people with disabilities, and the elderly have suffered worsening living conditions. Europe must act concretely and in solidarity to deliver a fairer recovery. Regional and local politicians think they do not count enough in the EU and want to have more influence in areas such as the economy, social justice, climate change, and the environment. And here you can help us to do this. Ignoring this code will be an unforgivable mistake and will widen the gap between Europe and these communities. We need a new push for European democracy to strengthen our European values. The Conference of the Future of Europe must be the place to start a real reflection about the EU's democratic model. This is our appeal for Europe and for you, if you can help us to join this target. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sergio Casci, for this statement. Let's now remain on an institutional level, even if we are moving again back from micro to macro. And I have the pleasure and honor to have here with us Massimo Gaudina, Head of European Commission, Head of European Commission representation in Milan. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon. Good evening, everybody. Thank you to the Fondazione Eni. I hope that everything works well. And thank you for this very interesting seminar. I could listen to some of the interventions. I think someone has still the microphone open.
c'è stata
Sorry,
cioè questa qui è la
Laura, would you
settimana
mind
europea delle
muting
regioni
Sergio Cacci? Because I think his microphone is on.
Quindi ti chiedono cosa possiamo fare per aiutare le regioni e le città così.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay. Sorry for the inconvenience.
No problem. Thank you very much. So I was saying that I listened partially to your event and many interventions of very high interest. Very interesting the research led by your research organization. So thanks to Laura Cavalli also for having coordinated this and invited me. Very interesting the focus on methodology on the national plan for Italy, but also for other countries, a methodology that shows that when we put together different levels of governance, public and private, stakeholders involvement, all this is a good model into cohesion policy, is a good model also for sustainable development. This is certainly an interesting remark that can also be a kind of conclusion. Very interesting also what I heard, the stories about Montalto di Castro, about the earthquake, about Sardinia, and about the local experiences that were shown. I think that from all these stories, all these witnesses that we had the opportunity to listen to today, we can draw some general remarks, some general conclusions. And one is certainly that when we talk about sustainable development, when we talk about the fight against climate change and sustainable growth at the same time, which is the Green Deal basically at the European level, but it's not only the European level at stake. But when we talk about these things, we are dealing with a transformation, a deep transformation, a transition that is a revolution rather than an incremental change. We are really on a moment of shifting paradigm. So it's important to set the scene and to make sure that the stake, the level of challenge we are now facing is clear at all levels of governance. It is clear for citizens, it is clear for stakeholders, and of course it is clear for policymakers at all levels. A second point is that environmental policies alone clearly are not enough to build sustainable development. Environmental policies are part of the solution, but there are certainly other sectors, other segments, other initiatives that have to be combined. And the local development and cohesion policies are certainly an important part of this global solution, because you can put together the level of governance that is closer to citizens and the level of governance that can contribute more than anything else to contribute to the global and the general final result. And also because, and this is the third point, regions and territories in Europe have a very different starting points when we talk about transition and green transition. We have regions which are already in transition and they have already developed renewable energies, new forms of mobility, building efficiencies, etc. You have regions based on carbon with a different level of development, with a completely different economic scenario. And this means that even European policies have to be very much differentiated and take into account the differences at local level. And this is what both the ordinary European funds, like the structural funds, but also the extraordinary funds, like the Next Generation and the national plans for recovery and resilience, should be based on. The national plan, as you know, and as the name says, are nationally designed, with, of course, some guidelines at European level. The European level has set the big priorities that are green and digital and others, but these are the two most important. But then every country has designed and proposed a national plan, and the Italian plan, for example, is very much focused on these two priorities, and it gives a lot of, let's say, diversified and localized interventions to facilitate this resilience and this relaunch of the economy. So I think that we can say that cities and towns are important, very important, when we talk about sustainable development. Cities and towns represent 75% of the EU population and account for most of our greenhouse gas emissions, and also they account for most of our jobs. So although the challenges tend to concentrate in cities, cities also appear as the places where opportunities grow and can be seized for the green recovery. And to enable the green recovery, engaging cities, communities and citizens in action for climate and the environment is of utmost importance. And this is among the preconditions to make the Green Deal a success. And the local governments are essential partners for turning EU policies and ambitions into reality. For example, the Renovation Wave strategy, that is a European strategy, aims to double the renovation rates of buildings in Europe by 2030. And this will result in up to 160,000 additional green jobs and 35 million buildings renovated. And of course, the local dimension, the local level is essential to make this a reality. And this is just an example. To conclude, the future of the cohesion policy. We are at the beginning of a new planning program, 2021-2027. And let's remember, this is in addition and in parallel with the next generation and the National Plan for Recovery and Resilience. And the cohesion policy will make a major contribution to the green recovery across cities and regions in Europe by working in close partnership with all stakeholders. Almost 1/3 of the Regional Development Fund will finance green projects, and this fund, together with the Cohesion Fund, is expected to invest more than 100 billion euros in projects related to climate and environment in the next 7 years. Let's remember also the Just Transition Fund that will complement these cohesion policy efforts, and with its 17 billion euros, the fund will provide the targeted support to territories facing serious socio-economic challenges in moving towards climate neutrality. So the objective is to make the transition just and inclusive, and to make sure that no territories, no region, no city, and no citizen is left behind. Cohesion policy will also empower actors on the ground, the local and territorial authorities, to address their own urban and territorial challenges. And these challenges include a range of topics such as climate adaptation, circular economy, sustainable land use, nature-based solutions, and urban mobility. In doing so, this cohesion policy will continue to invest in sustainable urban development. For example, the Parliament and the Council have agreed on a compulsory 8% of urban earmarking of the European Regional Development Fund. So there are many instruments. We cannot list all of them, but you know that they exist, they are operational, they existed partially in the past. Some of them are new, but all of them, they contribute to cohesion policy in the perspective of making regions and territories as a contributor to the green and smart and inclusive Europe that we are all building. So I thank you very much for this, for the organization of this webinar. I will certainly read all the documents and circulate them among the relevant colleagues also in Brussels. And I think that the key message is that we cannot win a challenge like the climate change, the sustainable development, and achieve the sustainable development goals by limiting ourselves to national policies. The solution is cross-border, is a supranational solution, but any supranational solution will need the contribution of the local level, of the cities, and of the territories. So thank you very much for this.
Thank you very much, Massimo Gaudino. If I can build just a small thought about what you said, I was thinking that specifically when you mentioned that we have very different starting points in terms of regions and territories in Europe, I think that's really one key of the recovery, because we need to differentiate and take all these realities into account. Otherwise, we will see a sort of a scissors mechanism, no? With those already successful succeeding even more, and those maybe struggling a little bit, becoming left behind. And I was thinking like the main principle of the Agenda 2030, no? Leaving no one behind. And I think it's very, very strongly connected with this. Also thinking about the recovery funds and the resources the EU is making available, we have to take into account the different territories, like different levels of the region, the provinces, and also the towns, to make them equipped to use and being in a sense eligible to use and develop in a sustainable ways with the instruments and tools the EU is giving to them. But also in a sense at the firms level, if we want, like we all know, Italy has a very, very strong reality of small and medium enterprises. And I think all these levels, we need to take them into account in order to have a really sustainable, inclusive and all-encompassing recovery. Okay. So
I can only agree on most of what you said. Maybe just let's clarify that the recovery funds and the next generation, they actually help the countries that are in most difficulties after the pandemics. Let's not forget that Italy was the country hit most than the others, with the lowest level of one of the lowest level of productivity, one of the lowest level of GDP growth rate. And so the fact that Italy, followed by Spain and by Poland, is the country that receives the most shows that the objective is really to reduce the gaps within Europe and not to go into the risky situation that you mentioned to enlarge this gap. This is certainly a key point for the European policies.
Exactly. Thank you very much. Okay, so now we can turn to our Q&A sessions. If there are questions on the chat, if not, you are still in time to write them, and we will deliver them to our speakers. In the meanwhile, I have a question to Mia Libegovic from Fondazione Eni Enrico Mattei. If Mia, you can appear again. Okay, perfect. Okay, so I can read it to you if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Perfect. So the question is, can we conclude that the Italian recovery plan is not sustainable 100%, but only to a certain extent? In other words, is it okay if it doesn't achieve all these 17 SDGs?
Well, thanks for the question, and thank you, Elena, for reading it. So to answer, actually, yes, it's okay if it doesn't contribute to all the SDGs. As already told by also the Professor Gaudina, recovery plans actually have three main strategic axes that are digitalization, innovation, ecological transition, and then there is the social inclusion. So the first two are those with the highest resources allocated, and as I also showed you before in the slides, in the National Recovery Resilience Plan of Italy, most of the resources are allocated actually in the Mission 2, Green Revolution, and Mission 1, Digitalization. For what concerns the social inclusion dimension, we have to make some considerations about the fact that we don't know actually, for example, for what concerns Goal 5, gender equality, how this dimension will be then decline into the implementation of the different projects. So we will see further when all the projects will be implemented, how this dimension will be then monitored actually. So I hope I have responded to the question.
Yes,
Thanks.
definitely. Thank you very much, Mia.
Thank you.
Okay, so in the meanwhile, we have another questions for, I would say, Marco, Anis, and Sandro Sanna. And it is, how can the study you show be applied to other realities? And how does that match regional programming?
Okay, it's open the mic. Is it
Yes.
okay? How can be reapplied and how can be applied to regional programming in general, in the sense of regional planning, I understood.
Yes, I think so.
Oh, yes. How I briefly outlined, we put a strong effort in the planning of the Sustainable Development Regional Strategy, and so we work together with all relevant stakeholders and working with them in close collaboration and in so-called thematic discussion tables, and that lead us to devise a strategy that is that has been recently approved in the last weeks. That we can say is an evolution of the regional strategic plan for the legislature, and a strategy that comprehend all aspects and in which all the financial funds that are not only the structural fund, but also the fund for the cohesion, the Italian cohesion, all other resources, also the regional budget can contribute. As for the replication, as Laura and Mia clearly exposed, we are a living proof of replication because we work together. We start applying the methodology in our strategic environmental assessment, and then to the ERDF regional OP, and then to the national resilience and resilience plan, and also there is we have a recent application to two island region Mediterranean, the Corse and the Balearic Island, that on which the model developed with the EU, with Fondazione Mattei, has been applied. I don't know.
Yes, thank you very much, Marco, for your answer. So we have another question for Fernando Nardi and Stefano Dorazio, I guess. So it's articulated into two, I believe. So let's give the first one to Fernando Nardi. And it is, how do you coordinate and connect the variety of stakeholders you mentioned? And then for Dorazio, was it difficult to link private money and volunteer work in a unique perspective?
And if I can add another one to these two, we talk about money coming from the European Commission, coming from the top, let's say, but then we hear from Dr. Dorazio that no money from the public, but only at volunteering level. So independently on the fact that we talk about recovery plan connected with COVID, but it was just an emergency issues as well. So how can we put together these two things? It's not only a question for the two of you, but for everyone.
Thank you, Ilenia Romani. Thank you, Laura Cavalli, for the follow-up question. I really, also through the presentation, I try to synthesize the diversity of stakeholder. When I wrote in the key final remarks, stakeholder language, I try to convey not just the concept of an output that from knowledge, science, and planning, design, engineering, you want to provide a synthesis that everyone understands, like citizen language. But the fact that anyone should be, addressed when you put your contact action, so that he feels responsible, he feels engaged, he feels the topic is of interest. And if you, in the process of the project I presented, and also an example, Dr. Dorazio will follow up, the collaboration between universities and civil society organization like Terra d'Amatrice from the Amatrice region and the citizen of Amatrice like Stefano Dorazio. You tailor your work starting from the beginning so that any target groups, let's use the definition that we call it in these kind of projects, feels the language of common interest. So you make a survey, you involve someone in a way that the project itself, the goals, is shared. So it's not a general way of saying, it's not just for saying, but is I think a principle that is also written behind the lines of the cohesion funds that we try to implement it. So I think I addressed the first question. I would like to leave to Stefano Dorazio for the second one.
Thank you. Let me explain how we have proceeded in this situation. We believe that for sure, private and public get to march all together. I personally believe, and that's our direction in our organization, is that we got to work to solve the problems, and to do this, we got to be the most flexible as possible. In the reconstruction of Amatrice and all the area destroyed by the earthquake, there were stricter rules, stricter rules in order to avoid that criminal organization enter the reconstruction and the funds. So we have decided not to, we decided to use just private money, private donation given us, just to be free to follow our goals. It's important that everybody march all together, and that's the reason why we started this cooperation with the department of Professor Nardi, and we are keeping on with new talkings and I hope agreements with the University of L'Aquila, with the same goal, that is the one to keep the people staying where they belong. And I think that our organization can propose projects to the institutions, to the township, or to the region, and then it's up to the higher level to get the funds to do it, because you know, we collected about 1 million euro since we were born, and we are the second organization, private organization, after the Ferrari car factory that has invested in the area. But we get to stay in our little position and let to those that may realize some project to get the financing to control it and to realize it. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I don't know if we have time for another question. Laura, what do you say? Or okay, yes, perfect. So there's one more exactly for Laura. So it's could the methodology applied by FEEM be used for other regions or countries in Europe and their budgets?
Yes, thanks, Ilenia, and thanks to the other colleagues for answering the previous question. The methodology we applied for Sardinia region, of course, can be applied for other regions, not only the Italian ones, but also the European ones, given that the main issue is the link between sustainable development, which is universal, and cohesion policy, which are set at the European level. Same level for the recovery funds, of course. And I think that this is not only an opportunity for those like us who are doing research, but also for strengthening the link between research and policies. Because of course for us, and I think that I'm talking also from Mia perspective and from Ilenia's perspective, and also from Fernando's perspective, it's really important publishing on the newspaper, but also at the academic level, because research does that. That is an innovation from this point. But then we should not only publish on academic paper, but we should be the real bridge between research and local development. Otherwise, we are doing things just for us. And the important part of a foundation, for example, like FEEM, is the one on trying to disseminate the academic research at different levels, to do what Dr. Dorazzo said before. So to help in funding funds and applying the research to the in order to implement different research projects, which are not only on the paper, but are on the field. So of course, yes, the methodology can be applied to that, and it's also important for us starting new reasoning with other regions or countries in order to make sure that what we are doing is really useful from the local level. I hope to answer the question, and I don't see any other question in the chat. Ilenia, do you see other questions?
No, I think we were able to answer them all. So if you agree, we can close here our event. So let me thank the context, so the European Week of Regions and Cities, as well as the Sustainable Development Festival by ASVIS, and of course Fondazione Eni Enrico Mattei, and then all the speakers for your time and your availability, as well as the whole audience who spent this beautiful afternoon together with us. Thank you very much again, and I guess we will publish the video on YouTube FEEM channel, so in case you would like to watch it again or share it with those who couldn't make it today. Thanks again. Have a nice evening.
Thank you to you, Ilenia, and to all the speakers.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye.